Hey, I'm Chris Gilchrist. I get to serve as the executive pastor here at Stonebridge Church in the Woodlands. Welcome to Sunday Continued. This is where we keep the conversation going after Sunday, asking the questions we didn't get to, talking through what this actually looks like in real life, and figuring out how to live it out during the week. If you're new to Stonebridge or just exploring, we're so glad that you're here. Our heart is simple. It's to lead people to a real, healthy, and growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you're local to the Woodlands or Magnolia, we'd love to meet you sometime. We gather every Sunday at 9:30 and 11:05. Now let's dive in.
This past week,
it was Father's Day, and you somehow found a way to relate Acts 19 with Father's Day, which when you were on stage at the beginning and you said, this is about Father's Day and there's great lessons for us, I was just thinking about, I don't know where he's going with this one.
well, because I was trying to think of it also.
But it was an interesting take on it, because I think for a lot of us, when we look at Acts 19, we'd focus on the front half of the chapter, and instead you took us to the back half, which I think is an easy story to just kind of read through and not really focus on and really settle with and just kind of move on past it. But you gave us, I really thought, this really interesting idea of what do we do when culture disagrees with us, or when cancel culture arises or conflict arises. What's our natural instinct, and how do we go about approaching it?
Yeah.
And so when you were thinking through it, what made you kind of go that way with Acts 19? Because I'm going to be honest, I haven't heard anyone go that way with Acts 19 before.
Honestly?
Yeah.
I knew we had to get through enough material. And so I knew if I got into the first part of Acts 19 that there were too many topics and subjects and things to deal with. And I thought this one was more usable and, like you said, just more applicable to us as far as men, or even, moms, women also.
Mm-hmm.
When you anything you have to lead in, this is, I think it's an important part of Paul's growth and development, and the growth and development of the church. It kind of shows that with Paul, it wasn't whatever Paul says and whatever he does. Sometimes you get that feel with people when they read the Bible. It's kind of like if it's Paul, or if it's Peter, or if it's John, whatever. So it's like they're Jesus. Mm-hmm. But the letters that he writes, we've taken those as being God inspiring him and leading him to write it. But it doesn't mean everything that Paul did was the right thing. And it certainly didn't mean that Paul didn't have a lot of growth himself, and he demonstrates it.
Well, I think the temptation a lot of times is for us to just read the letters and not actually have taken the time to read through Acts. Because if you elevate Paul and Peter in that way, a lot of times it's because you don't hear about their mishaps that are happening in Acts.
No, I agree. And I think that's to me, that's one of the interesting things about it, is you go through Acts and you see what Paul went through and all the journeys, and it really helps you to understand and grasp the letters that he wrote, like Ephesians, Galatians, the Corinthians, because you put it in those contexts and you say, okay, makes a lot more sense now what he's saying, which is why I came back and then read at least a couple of verses out of Ephesians, just to show about how he was trying to teach them and praying for them to have godly wisdom also, and to have insight and to understand who God was,
Well, and, they're in Ephesus at this time. We're kind of at that point in Scripture and in the storyline, and, this riot essentially ensues.
Yeah.
And I really liked that you kind of gave the underlying idea of why they were really upset, because on face value, you just read it as, they're upset about the spiritual concept. But then you actually talked about how it was really,
I think it was more
business
the money
related.
Yeah,
yes.
I think it was the business, and I think the spiritual aspect for them was a way to justify it and to tie it into something bigger. But I think they were business guys, and mostly they were interested in the loss of profit that they had either experienced or they were trying to project that they would experience if you guys don't help us get rid of these people who are trying to shut down our business of selling silver images of Artemis. And and I think that if you look at the issues, which is why I put that little line up there, they're all linked together. And sometimes it's hard to separate, the wealth from the business, from the popular esteem that they had, their business had, because they were successful businessmen, from the goddess and all that. And it's all kind of tied together. And, that what really wasn't, it didn't have anything to do with what Paul was doing, which is what I love is the city official comes in and basically says, look, if you've got guys have got something where he broke a law or he stole something or whatever, great. And there are avenues, legal avenues, take him to court. Let's try this. But this is not, there's nothing here that he has done or taken from you or whatever. It is an idea that could be projected from that. But he didn't really, Paul didn't really go after, not in this, he didn't go after the gods of the Greeks. He was going after, let me tell you about the living God who has come and given you life. Same thing he does in Athens, just does it in a different way. Same thing in Corinth. Again, different, set up in a different way that he does it, different group. And now in Ephesus, which he had been there before. But now there's this big pushback to what he says and all, trying to say, we need to get rid of this guy and these ideas of the way. I really love that it's characterized that way because they don't know what to say of it, what to call it. And so for them to call it the way, I mean, it's a pretty good picture of what Paul is presenting, that there's a different way of life than you guys understand that he was trying to present to them.
Well, it's just such an interesting, like you said, it's characteristic of their life must have looked so different for them to use that word. Like if you're going to say this is a different way of living or a different way to do things, it makes me think of like what made them look so different that would have been the characteristic that, they could have called them Christ followers or whatever they wanted to call them at that point, but they really strategically
And you think about, Chris, let me ask you this. Yeah. So in your life, when you became, really decided to become a follower, because I know you were brought up going to church and things like that too, but when you decided to really be serious about this, how much of that was a change of the way you would live your life?
It was a polar opposite way of living my life. Yeah. And I think for me too, I can even go back to, I was 17 years old and found Jesus, and my way of living completely changed to where my friends absolutely noticed immediately of the things, the ways.
Maybe more than you did at first.
No, I do remember like kind of being dumbfounded of like, I don't think that I felt different because Christ was in me and I was experiencing that, but I didn't feel like I was a different person to the world around me. And yet my friends looked at me and they were like, hey, what's
going on with you?
I mean, they kind of framed it more with like, hey, why are you being weird? Like what's going different in that way? But there was a moment where my way of living, the way that I was acting, the way I was talking, the way I treated people, got confronted with Jesus, and things naturally just started changing in my heart because the Holy Spirit was doing a work in me that I don't even know if I would have been able to say that was what was going on. I think I just was trying to do my best to live in a way that's like that. And so I think
that ties to in this part of Acts with Paul, and even with his friends challenging him of don't go into the amphitheater, don't go get into all that and into the screaming match or the fight or whatever. And even for them, they saw a different way, and so it was like they're telling Paul that this is not your way. This is not the way for you to go or the way for us to go. This is not what we're trying to do. As far as even the culture in Ephesus, it wasn't the goal was not to take over the culture of Ephesus.
No, they were not in the business of taking over cities. That wasn't their aspect. They weren't. The way was not to go try to make a new religion to then make money, then take over Ephesus. That wasn't what's going on.
Right.
And yet things are happening in Ephesus and things are changing. And like you were bringing up cancel culture, and there's this moment, obviously, where the crowd is so riled up, and Paul wants to go in. And Paul wants to defend himself, and then his friends stop him. I think it's really easy for us to relate to Paul in this passage of like whenever I'm offended or I feel like I need to respond to something right away, I think it's really easy to fall into what Paul was feeling in that moment of, well, I got to go defend myself.
Right.
And I think it was an interesting way that you approached it to where...
Or sometimes what you feel like, and maybe you felt this way before, I've got to go defend the truth.
Defend the church.
Defend God in this way or something like that. too. And I like to tell people, I have some friends sometimes that will do the same thing on social media. So and I ask them, I said, so what kind of difference do you think what you're doing is making? Do you think it's making a difference? Do you think it's doing anything? And most of the time they will say, well, no, not necessarily. And I'm like, then what is the point of doing this? And most of the time it's like, well, it just makes me feel better if I do this, and that's very human. I understand that. If I'm offended by something, I want to speak out. I want to react. I want to scream and holler a little bit.
So you say that, but I have never once, and maybe I'm wrong, seen you make a comment on somebody's post that you would disagree with, or taken a, jab at someone online, or, did any of the weird comment stuff. And so why, you have a platform, you are somebody that people see, in that light of like, they would probably say, I want Steve's opinion on this. Why do you go, I'm not going to comment on stuff like that, and I'm not going to engage in that type of way?
And I've wanted to.
Okay.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I want to go like, I need to get on here and straighten them out, or fix this, or offer a different understanding and explanation. And what really gets you is when someone does, and then they get a lot of positive responses from it. Then that just kind of makes you like, yeah, I need to go do this. But for me, it's just, okay, and what would this do? What is this really going to do? Because when you get on social media, you're not really engaging anybody. In fact, if anything, I learned pretty early, you're setting yourself up for people to take shots at you that you might not even know. They may not know you. They might not even disagree with you. They just want to take shots at you. Because there are people that use it in that way. And that's one of the things that came out in this passage in Acts, that it says some were saying this, some were saying that, and most of them were in the amphitheater and didn't even know why they were there, what the issue was. And that's what happens. It just gets very confusing and combatant, and there's something in us that says, yes, but I need to be involved in that.
I am sure that you have felt this before, where I have seen my friends post something and I go, oh man,
Yeah.
why would you think that was going to be even remotely effective? What's kind of your thought? We're all engaged in social media, or at least a lot of our people are.
Right. I mean, even the church, we're
Yes.
engaged in social media.
So-
we engage in it all the time.
So what's the line? Like, how am I supposed to know when to engage, when not to engage? How am I supposed to know when I am supposed to fight for something, or I'm supposed to not fight for something? What would your advice be to someone listening?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's hard, but you have to pick your time, and you have to pick your opportunity. And that's why I thought the verse out of Ephesians was so good when he says, I'm praying, that God would give you wisdom, his kind of wisdom and insight into who God himself is, because God could engage in everything if he wanted to. He could engage in every idea, everything that's done. And there are people, listen, I've been around people before, and sometimes I felt it too. I've prayed before, God, I don't understand why you don't, because I think you could, if you wanted to, you could change this. But he has his own timing and his own plans. Let me go back to the word they were using with the church in Ephesus. He has his own way, and he's got a plan. And part of being a follower of Jesus is to do the same thing that Jesus even himself did, which was to say, I'm here because of what the Father wanted and what he wanted me to do. And so I don't do or say things that he doesn't ahead of time tell me, this is what I want you to do. It's one of the reasons why Peter will come back. I think it's in his epistles where he says, and being reviled, he did not come back and revile in return. That would have been a natural thing to do, but that wasn't why he was there. That wasn't the purpose for him to be there. And in another place, he even talks about giving his life, and he says, it's for this purpose that I came. So, we'd be like, what? That you're going to die, you're going to suffer, and that's your plan or the purpose? Because we didn't understand it, but we are now, and 2,000 years later, there are billions of people who are the recipients of that choice that he made. So,
When I think of what you've taught me in just my life, I think it actually is really appropriate for social media. Because when I first met you, Steve, I think it would have been fine to maybe accuse me of being a little reactionary, maybe a little.
we all are when we're young.
Yeah,
and
maybe a little.
We are more that way.
Maybe a little overly passionate
Sure.
at times. And
That's what I say. The cancel culture, the speaking over to get your way, is pretty childlike. I didn't say it in the sermon.
Oh, it
So
absolutely
I thought
is.
I'd
though.
have somebody mad at me, but it is. It's a childish thing to do. Is just yell,
I mean,
yell, and think
your
you'll get
illustration was pretty much saying that, where you talked about it being like your grandchild that just yells until they can't yell anymore.
till they wear out. That's it.
But I just think of, how many times in my life, if I would just slow down and not react, would my words be better.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that, you used to always tell me is like, hey, give it a day, like just don't react right now. Think about it, pray about it, and then come back to it. And I think that's just one general rule that I've used in my life when I talk to people, but I think it's pretty apt when it comes to social media of, hey, maybe don't write right away. Maybe take some time to think about it, pray about it. Is this going to be something that brings, your friends closer to Jesus, or are you just caring about just getting your point across?
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson. I think you're answering it better than I could answer it. And sometimes
Well, it's because you taught me it, so it's easier for me to understand.
I've just gone through it and made the mistake so many times that you learn eventually. But before, when I would have really big time struggles, controversial things that I had to respond to, like in writing, I would often write it and then go to someone else and say, here, read this and be honest. Is this the best response? Is this the, whatever? And a lot of times someone who was older than I was, more mature, and wasn't as directly in the issue could give me some objective view that was just help me to realize you're right. Because again, the problem is you're in there trying to win the immediate, and at some point you have to stop and say, is that really what I'm trying to win? Do I really want the immediate? I felt like I won in this. My daughter, when she had her first child, we were in California, and so Madeline would not do what she was supposed to do, and she was just being bullheaded and stubborn. We're on a hillside, steep hillside. She won't sit back and she won't be buckled in, and so Jamie just looks at me and she says, "I can outwait her. I can wait here as long as we're not going anywhere until you do." And it was for her own good, her own safety.
Of course.
And then she did this. I like this because this has always stuck with me. She said, I know exactly what she's thinking. She says, she's thinking, I'm right and I'm smarter than you are. And then she said, I know, because I used to think the same thing when Mom would try to get me to do it. No, I'm right and I'm smarter than you are. So that means I'm justified in doing this and doing it my way. And, she would just say, but I've also learned, and she learned this even when she was an officer in the military. She just, because I would tell her, I would try to teach her, if you have to raise your voice to win the argument,
You've lost.
yeah.
It just reminds me of, like, what's our goal? And I think that's a big thing that I go back to with anytime when we're in arguments, especially when we're engaging in this culture and in so many ways, engaging not person to person. We're
Right.
doing it via text or DMs or any of the ways that we talk to people, and how even, I would argue, how more careful we have to be. Because if I can't see you face to face, you're not going to hear my tone. You're not going to hear my compassion. And I think where a lot of people get into the weeds of it is that they're like, well, that's not what I meant by it. Like, I
Right.
didn't mean to come off harsh.
But it's how they interpret it.
Well,
And a lot of times they interpret it by how they're feeling and their emotionalness and everything else.
Well,
too.
I just always tell people, I think you should assume they're going to interpret it the worst way
right,
possible.
Right, I agree.
And I don't know how many times that I've literally handed my phone to my wife and just be like, does this make me sound like a jerk? And like make sure that she catches it and make sure that my language wasn't too just, harsh. Especially, like when we were early married, of just like, my rule of thumb was just hand my phone to Brittany and just be like,
Yeah.
hey, how does this look?
And I think that's very different than when you're dealing with someone that you know and that is a friend. And because sometimes the words of a friend may seem harsh, but they're actually not. They're just very honest. And you can handle that because this is my friend. This is someone that cares about me. And so you receive those words different than if you have decided this person is against me or is my enemy. And that's what Paul would have walked into. He would have walked into a group of people who were convinced that he was Jewish, and the Jews are doing all these bad things, and they try to link them all together. And that, that really wasn't what Paul was doing in Ephesus, as far as we know. There's nothing there that says that. He didn't do it in Athens when he could have gone after the gods that were there, but instead he's pointing to the God that he thinks they're looking for, and they just don't understand, who he is. And I think that makes a big difference.
I love that point, because you're essentially saying, do you have influence with this person?
Right.
And I think that's maybe just a good rule of thumb. Like, if you don't have influence with these people, you maybe shouldn't even be engaging in a way.
Why would they take your criticism? Especially harsh criticism. If it's one of the things that Paul is accused of, is they said when Paul, when he's here in person, he's nice, and then when he writes, he's harsh. But it's because in his writings he's pointing out things because he loved them that they needed to correct.
Well, he knew them.
Yes, he did know them, and so it wasn't that he was trying to be harsh, but the whole point of writing was to say you need to fix these things. You can't live like this or do this because it's not in line with who God is and what He did through Jesus, for us. And I think that is always but again, it's who are you talking to? Who are you, relating that to? It's like we've said before that you need someone to confess your struggles to, your sins to. That it helps to heal you, and it keeps relationships strong. But you need to make sure that's somebody that cares for you.
Yes.
Because you just don't go you don't go telling your sins to just any and everybody. And sometimes people think that, and they feel like, well, at least it's a release. Yeah, but you might have armed them, someone who cares nothing for you.
I may have been coaching a staff member on that very idea this week of just, hey, there's a time when sharing is great and the honesty is awesome, but make sure that person is trustworthy of your honesty.
Right.
Because you're right. As much as we want to believe the best in people and we want to think that they're not going to use it in a way that would harm us, there's plenty of people that would. And you've got to make sure that who you're sharing with, what you're sharing, does it match your level of friendship and does it match your level of care?
Right.
And, I think that's something culturally that I think have just lost. It's just...
Well, you're right, because, and I think I don't think that it's ever been perfect or anything. There's always been a lack of civility, especially in politics in this country, because it's kind of set up that way. But I do think it's gotten worse in the sense it's gotten different. And the problem with social media is it seems like you can go after it in social media with no pushback, and it's not true. Where if you were face to face with someone, you probably wouldn't speak this way to them, but you can kind of go after them on social media a little bit more. It's really not true because you'll get a lot of criticism yourself, and a lot of times...
And on changing the way people think about you.
Yeah.
They might not say it to your face, but
Right.
I absolutely would guess, Steve, that there are people that you think of differently now because of what you've seen them put on social media.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing for me of, are you losing credibility with the world and the context around you because of what you're posting and the way that you're interacting? And remember what our ultimate goal here is. It is not to win an argument. It's to win people to Jesus.
I'll tell you the funniest one, Chris, for me is because I get a lot of stuff from Christian pastors and authors and things like that. So every once in a while, someone will come up with a book or an article or something, and it's pretty edgy. And they're trying to be edgy because of the interactions with the culture and the way, and so they'll put it out there, and then they just get slaughtered by the Christian community, and because they don't appreciate the edginess of it. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's really not a bad idea. It's pretty good, but the wrong place to do it because you just assumed everyone would know who you are and what your ultimate goal is. But a lot of times in any community, they may attack it. And once one starts, oh my goodness, it just, it starts the dominoes start to fall back and forth with people. And then it ends up not being a good thing. Certainly not a good thing if you're trying to sell a book, so.
Well, that's why the local church to me matters so much, is that there is a community of believers that you are known by and that know you and that can speak into your life.
Right.
And when you say something from stage they have many sermons that they've heard your heart and the way that you've explained things, and you're not taking just a snippet and saying, well, this is what Steve believes about everything. And I think that's what matters so much, is that relationships matter.
Right.
I loved in the passage that moment where Paul wants to go out, and the reason why he can't go out is because there's disciples holding him back.
Yes.
And in my mind, I just got thinking of, like, who are the people in my life that would hold me back from that situation? And then just for the people out,
besides Brittany?
Well, Brittany absolutely
Okay,
would hold me back. But just like, who are the friends? You know, who are the people that if I did do something like that, that would be bold enough to be like, hey, Chris, what are you doing? Like, why is this helpful? And why do you think that this would be a good idea? And then it just made me think, for our people, like, do you have those people around you that you've invested enough into where they can speak into your life? And one, are you willing to accept what they speak into your life? And two, would that cause any change?
And I think that's a lot of times what the group is there for, the fellowship of a group, whether you're a small group or a Bible study, some group that you have grown close to and you've grown close in your relationship with the Lord. You know, with that type of group, you can say, this is what I'm thinking, and they will give you some wisdom that you might not be able to see at the time. They will help you out, which is how you grow, because and maybe one day you'll give out similar wisdom to someone else who just thought they had to do something. And part of it is it's kind of human to think you've got to do something. Yeah. If you don't do something, then why are you here? You're just taking up space. But again, like I said, I think Paul is learning, and you certainly see this with Jesus, that there were times he did something, there are times he didn't do anything. In fact, I love it in John, in his version of the gospel, he talks about how they were all excited over his miracles, and they wanted to make him king. And it says that, but he knew what was in the heart of man. And I like that, because that is really what you're talking about. And sometimes people get all worked up, and he didn't need them to make him king.
No,
he knew who he was, and he knew his own position and everything else too. He didn't need them to validate that or to give it to him, and he knew this wouldn't turn out well if he did that.
When I just even look at Jesus' life, just not just the pace in which he lived, but also the pace in which he approached problems, and when things arose, he wasn't reactionary, that he was calm,
right?
He was patient. You get the sense that he was breathing still, and he wasn't getting red in the face and getting all worked up. And for us, as we follow Christ and as we try to live like him, I think we should also try to adopt how he dealt with the world's problems. And that he didn't panic all the time, and that he didn't feel the need to fight every single battle that arose in his life. He could have been in a debate his entire life if he wanted to, and he would have won a lot of them, but you get the sense that that's not what he came for.
Right.
And he didn't come to make much of himself in that way.
Even at the end of his life, when he's accused, you a king, you have followers, he pretty much doesn't answer it, or he lets, his accusers say those things, but because that's not what he was trying to win. He wasn't trying to win an argument there or to show that. He was going to show something else in the days after that, when he goes to the cross and he walks out of the grave. Because there's no bigger statement in all of history than the one who walks out of the grave, out of death, on his own, to a whole life, a whole glorious revealing of himself that wasn't true before, wasn't known before. It's a pretty big statement.
It's a better winning of an argument there.
Yeah.
So, Steve, if you wanted to give someone one thing, like, hey, what's one thing I want you to think through, pray about, work on this week, what would be your challenge for them coming out of Acts 19?
I think what Paul said in Ephesians about wanting godly wisdom. God, teach me to be wise, which means it's not just he tells you something, because we tend to hear and still not apply it, but you have to go through circumstances many times where you realize, no, that really is true. I shouldn't have said that, or learn from this. And again, like I said in that statement, and he uses that word, he says, an insight into who God is. And I think that that's a lot of what this is also. And Paul is continuing to learn and grow, as he should, into what is God like and who is God. And ultimately, if God can not look like he's winning and yet be winning, then that's a pretty good person to attach yourself to or to learn from, who ultimately will win and ultimately will prevail.
That's great. I think jumping off that too, my encouragement would just be, hey, find people that are wiser than yourself.
Yeah, they can help you.
Who are the men and women at our church that you can go and join community with, that can help you when you have the moments of, I don't know what to do here and I'm struggling and what should I do? Or even when you actually mess up and you recognize that, and how do I repair in the ways that I messed up?
And to be able to take that, which you can, it's easier to take it from your friends, from people you know that care about you, than from your opponents.
You're probably
It's
not
hard
going
to
to take it
from
from
your
them.
opponents.
And you're probably not, and it's probably going to enrage you more. And I think,
Yeah.
The thing that we do as a society now is that we just stay that enraged spiral, and then we
Right.
just get more and more mad. And I think it takes stepping out of that echo chamber, getting in community, being around people that you can see face to face and hear from them and have them give you wisdom is one of the best things that you can do. Honestly, just stay off the internet more. That's a good one too. Just
I go to it to keep up with my friends and see what's going on. I check and then I get out of there before my fingers do the walking through the things I don't need to walk.
that's good. Just
through.
have a time limit.
That's right.
That's
All
awesome.
right, next week, Acts 20.
Next 20.
Sounds good.
All right. See you next week.
Okay.